Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Stately Office Hours. This is where us, the team at Stately, talk to you about what we've been working on at Stately and on XState, answer your questions, and get your feedback. We've got lots to talk about today, including a new face we will introduce you to in a moment. So let's just start off, as we often do, with introducing ourselves. My name is Laura Kalberg, and I do developer and designer relations for Stately, and a few other things. This job title may be in flux. How about you, David? Who are you?
My name is David Khorshid, also a wearer of many hats. I'm the creator of XState, founder of Stately, and also a workshop instructor. So you might see I have a new background right here. And this is because I'm in Minneapolis right now. I just gave a workshop at Front-End Masters. By the way, on Front-End Masters, I do have a few XState and XState and React workshops, so please go check those out. I just finished recording a CSS animations workshop where, believe it or not, it does include state machines and how to use state machines to properly model your animations, because it's really useful. So yeah, that's me.
And how about you, Matthias, or Anderist, as you are more commonly known?
Hi, I'm Anderist, Mateusz from Poland, and I'm a regular TypeScript developer mixed with customer support for XState.
And our new face, we are really happy to welcome Kevin to the team. Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe tell us how you came about working with Stately?
Sure, Laura. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Mays. First of all, I'm just really excited to be here. I'm a software engineer. I'm based out of the city of Philadelphia, which is on the East Coast of the United States. I've worked on a lot of different projects as an engineer, products that were for large companies and also startups, really a wide range. And I love building things, and I really love collaborating with amazing people and amazing teams. So I can see that I'm clearly at the right place here. And let's see, in terms of how did I even get here? Well, I would say that perhaps like many of you out there, I was really introduced to the concepts of finite state machines and state charts and XStates by a lot of David's early talks over the years. They're still going, they're still great. So, really, I've seen things like XState evolve, and I've been super interested in that. My last job was at a company called Giant Machines, a digital product agency in New York City. And I really kind of spread the word there about XState, about finite state machines, and I've been really interested in that. So in the last several months, I actually have been tuning into the office hours here and following the work as an observer. And so part of me is just really, so excited to be here now.
You watch the office hours and now you're in the office hours.
Exactly.
We're really, really happy to have you with us. We're looking forward to doing lots of great work together. Now, folks,
Likewise.
if you want to ask us any questions, if you have any feedback for us, you're welcome to ask in the YouTube comments. We can show them on screen here, like our friend Johannes is just giving us a little wave emoji there. You're also very welcome to join our Discord, and that is at discord.gg/xstate, and there we have a dedicated office hours channel. So if you have any questions, you can always ask us in there or in any of the other channels that we have there. And you can also find us on Twitter at StatelyAI and on LinkedIn. We're just Stately. You'll recognize us by our lovely little logo mark that we've got there. So first up, it's been a really busy few weeks for us, and that's why we didn't have an office hours last week. And last week was because you both were at Reactathon, David and Matthias. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that went?
Sure. So yeah, being at Reactathon was really exciting for a few reasons. First of all, we actually sponsored part of the conference. We were, just in great company with companies like Prisma and Vonage and Zeta and, all these other companies, also Replay.io. Just sitting at a booth, it was me, Mateusz, Jenny, and Gavin. And we were just talking to people about XState and about Stately, and also just talking about the problems that people face in their companies with regard to shipping software and dealing with bugs and understanding logic, all things that we really want to, help companies solve. So it was really great. We were also handing out a lot of swag, including t-shirts and pens and notebooks and stickers and all sorts of fun stuff. But also there were 2 talks. One of them I gave, in which I had a couple of slides on state machines, but it was more about the use effect hook and how to properly model your effects. The conclusion of it was like state machines are a really great way to model effects in a way that doesn't make you want to pull your hair out. And there was also a talk by Eric Rasmussen of Centered, in which he talked about state machines on the edge. So basically using state machines in the backend. And if you get a chance, the videos, or at least the entire live stream, is online, and I think you could find it on reactathon.com. I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'll have to verify that. But his demo was really interesting because it was using XState to drive a checkout form, I believe. Just a very simple app. And then at one moment, he turned the JavaScript off completely, and it worked exactly the same. The reason why, because XState was actually working on the back end. So I just thought that was extremely cool. So yeah, we had a lot of great conversations, met a lot of familiar and new faces, and we're looking forward to just showing up at future conferences and saying hey to everyone.
I'll make sure that we've got links to both of those videos, or the right point in the live stream. I'll add it to the comments, I guess, below here on YouTube, and I'll tweet them out probably at the beginning of next week. That's when I tend to get on top of all of the office hours. And yeah, but I think both of those talks have already been shared in our Discord. If you are interested, you'll be able to find the links right away in there. And speaking of other events that we've got coming up, I thought it would be a good opportunity to mention that you will be at Remix Conference in, I was going to say in May. We're already in May, in a couple of weeks' time, won't you, David?
Yes, that's right. So I'm not talking. No one on the Stately team is talking. Eric will be giving his talk again there, which is going to be super exciting. Yeah, so we're just going to be around again, handing out stickers and talking to everyone. I love Salt Lake City, so it's a really good place to have a conference. So if you're going to Remix, please make sure to find us, say hi, grab some swag if we have it.
And not long after that, there is Render Atlanta as well. That's from June the 1st to the 4th. I don't know if I have notes down as to who's doing what there. I know that I'm not there.
Right. Yeah, so it's going to be me, Gavin, and Jenny at Render ATL. I will be giving a talk. And also, I think I forgot to mention at Remix, Matt Pocock will be there in the flesh. So it was really exciting to, see Mateusz in the flesh at Reactathon. So now you get a chance to meet Matt Pocock.
It's been really nice seeing all the photos of the team together. I'm looking forward to being a part of one of those in the not too distant future as well.
Yeah.
Still not met any of you in person. It's very strange.
It'll happen.
And for those who want to meet me in person, I'll be back in the UK, in Birmingham, in June 9th to 11th, and I will be giving a talk that is very much related to Stately and to XState, because I'll be talking about design and diagramming and how we use different design tools and visual languages in order to communicate design, especially working within multidisciplinary teams. So if you're around the UK, and especially if you're into design, because there's a really great design festival going on in Birmingham, you should come join me. It would be lovely to meet you. Now, next up, we wanted to talk about RFCs. I think there's a few that we've got up for from David and from Mateusz right now. So maybe you'd like to talk about the RFCs you've got. RFCs are requests for comment, and we now have a repository on the Stately GitHub where you can read what we've currently got going on and offer your thoughts and your feedback on these RFCs.
So the RFCs repo is going to be the main place where we start talking about major decisions that we plan to make in version 5. And version 5 is quickly approaching. In fact, we're like this close to releasing an alpha. We just have a monster PR that we need to get sorted. But yeah, so RFCs are a great place for you to just leave your comments on what you think of some upcoming APIs. If there are some use cases that we might not have thought of, then just please leave your comments there. Currently, there are 2 RFCs in progress in our public RFCs repo. There's the System Receptionist RFC, which allows actors to arbitrarily communicate with other actors that are registered to this receptionist, and it just makes actor communication a lot easier. And also errors in Xstate, which right now in version 4, some errors, it becomes like a little hard to just not decipher the errors, but to actually capture errors. I guess Mateusz could talk a little bit more about that. So the RFC for errors in Xstate improves that a lot.
Yeah, basically, the main problem is what you have mentioned. So that some errors are not really captured by Xstate, so we unfortunately swallow some. But also an effect on a parent machine is a little bit maybe not as much as unknown, but underspecified. So we'd like to really make our story around errors solid. So all of you, our consumers, would have strong could have strong expectations about those things, because errors happen, so we need to deal with those in applications. And yeah, it's always great to have a clear picture for how you can actually manage that. So both in terms of how an error impacts a hierarchy of machines and stuff like that, but also how it impacts the machine itself, and so on and so on. So yeah, there are a couple of ideas in this PR or in this RFC. Maybe not everything there is good. Some things could be even removed and maybe reintroduced later. We might want to scope it down. The main goal is to definitely make it predictable, because we are all about that.
So what kind of feedback are you looking for in these RFCs? If people come to comment on your PRs, what feedback is useful to you?
It's both from if the idea is good, if this solves their problems that they are having, if they can think about alternative solutions, and yeah, which parts are good in their eyes, which parts maybe could be rethought, and so on and so on. So any kind of feedback, really, from I hate that to I love that, it's all appreciated.
So here's a good example from Nick. Nick says, I keep on running into architecture issues where I want to interpret a machine inside a component, but also want it to listen to events in a parent machine so I can send and receive events from it. So a use case is helpful as well then in feedback for RFCs?
Absolutely, yeah. And so that's a really good example of a use case that we really want to make sure that an RFC is covering, or maybe we need to introduce a new RFC or rework part of an RFC so that it does cover these use cases.
Fantastic. So Nick, if you want to head on over and pop that into the receptionist PR, we'd really like to know any more information that you have as well. I think specifics are always really valuable too, aren't they? Now, one of the things that we have been discussing recently is the new Xstate docs. So if you have been with us in previous office hours, you'll know that Matt and I have been working on a reworking of the Xstate docs, trying to restructure and explain stuff as well as we can, keeping it all up to date as well, with everything that's in V4, but potentially introducing things from V5 as well. And we're hoping to have something to share with you all very soon. But in the meantime, Matt shared earlier in this week that he was thinking of cool ways to include examples in the docs. And we really wanted to know, what examples do you all want to see in our docs? Because we could do examples for anything. And so we asked this question Yeah, Matt's very much been steadily feeding sneaky previews. You should follow mpocock1, I think it is, on Twitter, if you want to see lots of sneaky previews. He's great for those. And so we asked, what examples should we include in the XState docs? So we had some really great feedback from this. Starting off with just simple things like global state management. Akil Sai said, global state management and testing of the actor model. Now, this proves to be very popular because we've had Devin saying examples of actors doing all the things, and then Hein Shuli saying actors and testing, and Greg saying testing and actors. So I think there's a lot that can be documented around testing and actors.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like I said before, actors are like one of the biggest areas where it seems to be like a point of confusion for a lot of people. So, but you know, actors and communication between actors is also a really powerful feature of XState. So more examples are definitely needed for this, and we will have those.
And if any of you are having confusion around actors right now, feel free to send Matt or I a message on our Discord. What we can do is we can actually send you a preview of what we've got in our current docs, because we'd love your feedback on whether that helps you understand actors a little better, and what else we could add in there to help make it easier to understand as well. So we're happily sharing lots of previews with folks in order to make sure that the docs are as good as they can be. We also had more on testing. So, oh, this is actually one from a previous, I managed to include a tweet from a previous time. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. Framework-specific requests for examples. So Huang said, I know XState is not about framework specifics, but the example of using Next.js server-side props, React query, XState sync might be great. And we are totally on board with having framework-specific examples in there, because we know that whilst you don't have to use XState with a framework, many of you are already.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and so we also want to dispel the notion that XState is primarily React. Like, sure, you know, a lot of the examples are React based, but of course, many people talk about using XState in Vue and even Angular, Svelte too. We even have PR, I believe, out for stencil integration. So there's just a lot of different ways you could use XState. But yes, more examples are necessary for this, because having XState be framework agnostic also means that, you know, some things are easier, but other things are harder because of the agnosticness, if that's a word.
Yeah, and so if you are using a particular framework and you want to see an example for your framework, or even understand better how you could use XState with your framework of choice, let us know, because we'd be really happy to try to do that work, or find someone who knows the framework really well to help us do that work as well. And Manuel said multi-step form as well. I guess speaking of Eric, and he's the forms person. But I think that that's a popular request, is using XState for multi-step forms as well.
Yeah, this is probably the #1 example I point to when people ask, what should I use XState for? And multi-step forms are like a wonderful example on the front end of where you would use XState.
And Martin said, this may sound silly, it's not silly, but a page or directory regrouping all the examples from the docs would be great. And I can totally see the use case for that. I often wish I could see a lot of examples side by side, because it helps me understand the differences in how things work. And finally, I don't know why I've managed to get another... I've done something funky with my keynote today. What this one was supposed to say was, it would be really cool to have community input in the examples. And of course, the docs will be open source, and you are more than welcome to send us a PR with examples that work for you and your use cases. And that would be really helpful for us, because we can then share it with other folks who want to use XState in the same way. And now I will put that away so we can not look at my mistake any longer. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about ZagJS, and you flagged today, David, that Segun, who made ZagJS, also responsible for Chakra, was on the Learn with Jason show. And I believe the URL for that is there.
Yeah, I actually watched the live stream. I was in it, or at least in the chat. It was really exciting. So just for reference, Zag does not use Xstate directly, but they're using a syntax very similar to Xstate, which is exciting because in the future it could integrate with stately tools, and that's something that we want to do in the future anyway, which is allow our stately tools to be useful for just more than just Xstate. That's still pie in the sky. We're still thinking about like how that's going to work. But the main idea is that these are all reusable components that are backed by state machines. And so because of that, like every one of these components basically has like two ways to interface with it. You could read its state and you could send it events. And so when you really stop and think about it, a lot of components can be described this way. In fact, most components, even something as complex as a date picker or as simple as a number picker, which is actually not that simple. In this live stream, it actually talks about some of the accessibility issues of building your own components and how ZagJS solves that by really bringing accessibility as like a primary baked-in feature of these components. And so what's great is that these reusable components, it's not like just being done for individual frameworks, but in fact, it's framework agnostic. So you could write your own adapters for whatever future framework or obscure framework you want to use, but especially React, Vue, I believe Solid as well. So this is super exciting because it really allows you to customize the UI to your liking and to ensure that the logic is exactly the same, whichever framework you use.
Oh, it's fabulous. I really admire that about Segun's work as well. The focus is always on accessibility, and I wish there were more people like that in the web industry. We really need them, and you can learn a huge amount from what he builds, and it's very cool.
Also, someone mentioned in the chat, seeing the Zag number picker in the stately viz was an exciting surprise. I don't have the link handy, but in that live stream, if you managed to take a look, they built some sort of page where you could actually visualize all of the state machines of all the components in there on the stately viz. So it's super cool. And I think they embedded the stately viz, which by the way is open source. So, they could easily do that. And it was really cool to see how even some of the simple components are actually a lot more complex than they seem. And you actually see some of the accessibility details in these state machines because, again, accessibility is often a forgotten topic, like, oh, we'll deal with it later or let the browser take care of it. But it actually requires a lot more care and thoughts than you might think. And the state machines really, really show that.
Oh, I love that. And how great to have such good examples. I'm looking forward to watching that back now.
Yeah.
Going back to talking about the examples as we were earlier, because we've had a few great comments from folks. Valentin says, I want to architect all of my apps with Xstate, but as a React dev, I want to also leverage the power of Next.js. However, both seem to be battling each other. Do you plan examples with Next? Now, I'm not so sure about them battling each other. What do the rest of you think?
So there is an example in the Next repo. It's a simple counter example, though. So I think we do well to make a few more in-depth examples.
Yeah, and especially given that we at Stately use Next quite a bit on what we're building. So we're very well placed to understand how to use Xstate with Next. So I think they're going to be some pretty good, easy examples for us to get up there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess on that note, I'd be curious to hear. Oh, sorry, Laura. Just be curious to hear like where the perceived tension is, though, in terms of Next. Be curious to hear from the community what that is.
Yeah, Valentin, if you could let us know, or maybe we can discuss it in another office hours. It would be really interesting to hear about. Scott said, I absolutely love actors. They are easily the least understood feature of Xstate for my co-workers. Some simple examples in the docs would help, I think. So we totally agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Johannes says forms and routing can always do with more love. I think there's a lot of things that could always do with more love, but absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that.
Scott says, would love a clickable link to the video. I'm really sorry, Scott, because of the nature of video as a medium, we can't right now put clickable links in because this is just broadcasting as a video as it was. But I will put the link in just for you. I will do it directly after we finish the office hours. I'll make sure that that link is in the description for you, and so you can get access to it. And I'll make sure it's posted on our Discord as well. Oh, someone else saying that it's saying the video is unavailable. I'll look into it and make sure we've got the right one too. That may be my copy paste error. We shall see. Now on the topic, just before we get there, I've just seen this brilliant comment pop up. Big props to Matt Pocock. I've learned a lot about XState with his, I'm assuming that's YouTube and Twitter accounts. Yeah. We're sorry that Matt's not here today. He's a bit under the weather and needs to give his voice a bit of recovery. But I'm sure we will be hauling him back on office hours next week or as soon as we can, because we know he's very popular and his demos are always great. So what I was going to say was more on the topic of docs. I wanted to get all of you three and everyone else here's opinion on code blocks in documentation. So I've prepared a little demo here. So one of the things that we're doing in the XState docs is we're just trying to make everything as readable and as easy to use as possible. The idea is you don't notice the design of the docs. You just find it really easy to read it and find what you're looking for. And one of the big features of docs like XState is a lot of code examples. And so I wanted to get your opinion when you're thinking about light mode and dark mode, which we are going to have both in the new docs. So I know at the moment that it's funny because the editor is exclusively dark mode and the docs is currently exclusively light mode. So we're going to bring those together so that you have the option that will respect the preferences that you specified in your operating system, and maybe even provide you more options in the future. But first of all, I wanted to get your thoughts on light mode and dark mode in docs. So here on the screen, I have an example where I have light mode and dark mode, but both are using dark mode for the code blocks. And I think this is a pretty common thing that you see across docs. Now, is this all of your preference, or would you rather have your code blocks in light mode as well when you're looking at light mode versions of docs?
I'll let the others respond. I would just say that it's, I've seen both in various things. So I think it is useful to basically be able to quickly see this is a code block and this is a description or this is some text. Having that differentiation doesn't mean that you have to have contrasting light mode and dark mode. Maybe it could just be a border or a subtle background color. It depends. But yeah, I'd be really curious to see what other people think.
Yeah, so I've prepared examples here of using, say, a different color background or using a border around that text. And I have to say, I think when I look at pages that have a lot of code blocks one after the other, it's easier if you can distinguish between those code blocks at a glance. So maybe having some kind of separator is useful. But it's really how to do it and whether it whether it does follow your preferences as well for light mode and dark mode. If anyone does have any very strong opinions about it, we'd love to know, because we want to make sure that the docs work for as many people as possible by default.
So I definitely agree about being able to easily identify the code blocks by just scanning the page. But I often find that when we have a light page and then suddenly this black box in the middle, it looks very slapped on, it's like using completely different technologies and something, totally different language. So that can be a little abrupt. And I'm glad you prepared some of those examples there, Lara, because they do look kind of subtle and nice, the one, even the sort of mid-tone one. So I don't know, something that achieves that, but has enough contrast, obviously, to be accessible would be great.
Yeah, one of the things, accessibility being one of the considerations, I think is important, that People don't always use light mode and dark mode because it's just their personal preference, or just because it's nighttime or daytime, which I think a lot of operating systems can enforce. But also that sometimes it's hard to read light mode or dark mode if you're in a particular setting. So I'll give an example of the Reactathon, where you were all looking at slides that were in bright outdoor daylight, and it made it very difficult to see dark screens and dark text. And so I think it's important to make sure that we're accommodating people's needs as well. I'm going to have a look, see that we've had a lot of comments here, so I think a lot of people have opinions on these. I thought this might be the case. Kevin said, light mode code, please. Scott loves dark mode in general. Johanna says, as someone who never uses light mode, I do not have a horse in this race. Oh, but you do still have a horse in the race because of how distinctive the code blocks are against the rest of the text. Is also a consideration here. Alama says consistent dark mode would be nice. Code blocks are pretty distinguishable. I'm really sorry, Hranfkel, I'm butchering your name, I'm sure. Light mode is essential for being able to work outside in the sun. So that's very much like the Reactathon use case that we had. And Scott said, one thing that would be nice is colorblind options. I have a family that's a green-red colorblind, and some of the code is hard to read. I don't know if you'll find it from these examples here, Scott. I've actually currently just chosen to use the GitHub theming for the code blocks, because I know that they've tested those specifically for color blindness. So you're not going to be finding red and green being used indistinguishably, which I think is a very common issue for people who are colorblind. Sylvan said, I think having a contrast difference is good. Johanna says, my gut instinct is that light mode should probably have a light background for the code too. That was my gut instinct as well. And Kevin said, light mode code in dark mode docs. I think that's causing some trouble there. And Devin said, Remix uses a color background to distinguish code blocks. I dig that pattern. So maybe we could start introducing some color in. A bit more fun than just grayscale everything. So did anyone else have anything that they wanted to mention or discuss this week, team?
You know, when thinking about the color modes, I'm like, you know what? This could be a parallel state. Like, why not let, or, you know, like parallel states where it's like light mode or dark mode, and light color blocks or dark color blocks. So, yeah, because
so we'll be looking out for a setting.
Like a double toggle or something like that. That'd be interesting to model.
Yeah. Could be a fun example. Something to blog about as well.
Yeah.
Something for me to get my teeth into a bit of XState as well. So if that is everything that everyone has to share this week, we will wrap it up. I think it's been a pretty decent one, not as short and sweet as we thought it was going to be. So thank you everyone for joining in and for your comments. We really appreciate it. We love having you here. If you have any questions that you want us to answer in future office hours, feel free to join our Discord. And the banner for that is discord.gg/xstate. And you can ask us any questions in the office hours channel there, and we'll make sure that we answer them on the stream next week. You can also tweet us at StatelyAI, or send us a message on LinkedIn. We are Stately on there. Or any of us on Twitter. You'll be able to find us easily enough. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you again next week.